Your body has its own self-cleaning mechanism that clears out cellular debris and junk proteins. It's called autophagy. But the key is most people don't get to activate it because we are snacking and grazing throughout the day. But this one key piece really does prove to be the best thing for our health and longevity long term. So today we are talking about all things fasting, time-restricted eating, and autophagy, which is a very fun, hot topic, something we talk a lot about in clinic. Welcome to The Natural Doctors. I'm Dr. Katie Danello, along here with Jen Stagg. Thanks for joining us. We have a fun topic tonight, but first, before we get into that, we want to talk about this topic in relation to what we are truly seeing in clinic, like today, yesterday, right, last week. So, Dr. Jen, give us an update here. How are you seeing this come into your clinic?
Yeah, this has been playing out for a number of patients lately. And these sort of like, I can think of 3 patients off the top of my head where similar profiles. So they're women in their mid to late 40s, early 50s. So I'm thinking of these 3 women, and they are doing seemingly all the right things. Okay. So this group. These are, very health-minded, conscious, about what they're eating, their stress management, their movement. Yet, they're coming in and going like, oh my gosh, is this perimenopause? Like, what's going on? I've gained a little bit of weight here. And is it inflammation? This is like, okay, what's going on? What else could I even do? Right. And even they're not even showing any other signs that it could be hormones. And with these patients, backing up a little bit, these patients, then we've introduced this basically fasting, right? In different ways, because there's a lot of different ways. We're going to talk about it today. So a couple of them we did fasting-mimicking diets. And then another one, we were just focused more on this time-restricted eating. Yeah. And all 3 of these patients, this was sort of like the key that really started turning their metabolism basically like back on. And we'll talk about why that would make sense, right? In that patient population. So we'll get into that.
And it's so interesting, right? Like when patients come in and they're tired, they've got brain fog, they have fat that they can't lose, right? This weight loss resistance. The first thought is, am I in perimenopause, right? And no, like not always, right? I know that menopause and perimenopause are hot topics right now, but it's not always your hormones. And so this is a really simple, basic need that our bodies they need this, right? In order to be healthy. And so when I'm asking patients about how often they eat, and that is a question I ask all my patients, is like, when I'm like, oh yeah, tell me about, an average day of eating. This is something that's going through my mind is, are you giving your body the ability to fast? And this is not just from a weight loss perspective. This is about true cellular health, longevity, anti-aging. So where I see this come up a lot and where I'm thinking about it is actually in people who graze throughout the day.
And it can be healthy. So this is in this group I'm talking about, these 3 separate women. They're not friends or anything, but exactly 100%. They're eating pretty good, great food choices. Maybe you could, change make a little few modifications. But the biggest thing standing out is that they don't have a long enough gap, right? Where they have nothing coming in. So they are not getting that metabolic digestive rest, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? And we, this other picture we paint is the freaking Starbucks drinks. I cannot. I need to vent about this for a second, actually.
Okay, let's go.
Because over the weekend, my husband was like, I was ordering a black coffee from Starbucks, iced black coffee. That's it.
Good girl.
Yeah, that's usually what I get.
Right.
And he was like, I need something good, right? And my husband doesn't have the same eating habits as me. I'll say that. And so he's like, oh, I really want something. And so he was like, order me a refresher, right? I know you know what the refreshers are.
Yes.
And so I'm on the menu.
I have high school girls, so I know
I'm sure they know what the refresher.
Yeah. Very familiar.
And there's some new flavors right now. And so I'm on the menu and I'm like, okay, first of all, you can get it with lemonade or water, automatically getting it with water without a doubt, right? And then I think it was 2 pumps of whatever syrup they were using. So he gets the drink and he like almost spits it out. He's like, this is so sweet. I cannot drink this. I kid you not. He got a huge glass to water it down so much. And it was still
so over the
top. Sweet. And this is what people are drinking throughout the day, right? Even if you think about it, like, okay, you have breakfast, then you have lunch, right? So, okay, good. Maybe we get like 3-4 hours if we're lucky, but you probably have a coffee with creamer in between then. So really not a lot of time with,
or maybe you're snacking on a few nuts and thinking you're like, oh, I'm feeling like I need a little something. And that's like a better choice,
an
right?
apple.
So now you're in 2 hours of fasting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have your lunch and then you're like, okay, my afternoon treat, whatever, that you get a refresher, right? And that's sugar and you're sipping on that for at least an hour.
Right. So even though it's not food, we do want to emphasize that any calories coming in, like sugar, will turn that metabolic system on.
Exactly.
Right?
And then you have dinner and then, or maybe even a snack along with that refresher, then dinner. And so here you go. You've been grazing throughout the entire day. So, these drinks, you guys, we got to stop. And it's so bad. And I know
on so many levels.
Yes. And I work from home on Wednesdays and I often will go to a Starbucks to get work done. So I'm not cleaning my house instead of working. And I see what everyone is ordering and I'm like, this is crazy. Like this has got to stop. So anyway, a little soapbox there.
Okay. That's
but
good.
it is this picture of grazing throughout the whole day. And then a lot of women who are 50, 60 years old, they grew up in a time period where it was breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, right? And that,
evening snack.
Yes.
Bedtime snack. Like my grandmother, we slept at her house. We'd have bed lunch and you'd have like toast and tea, very British.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is British. Exactly. Oh my gosh. So yeah, like you are not giving your body this time for autophagy, which we're going to get into.
Yeah.
So if you come in to see us and we're asking you about your food, this is
right. When you're eating specifically. Yeah.
Exactly.
So maybe we start talking about like, okay, so what is this autophagy? It's that cell, as you mentioned at the start, it basically is our self-cleaning system. So what needs to be cleaned up, right? It's kind of zombie cells, damaged proteins. When I'm saying zombie cells, we're saying like cells that aren't functioning very well anymore, right? And those are accumulating as we get older, which is why this will be so much more significant for patients that are in their 40s. I mean, people in their 20s and 30s, when they do this stuff, they can still feel the benefits, but really once you get into your 40s and beyond, the benefits are so pronounced when you just start doing it and you've never done it before, like the mental clarity and all of that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it is really cool when we take a step back and think about it, that our body has this inherent mechanism so that it can get rid of these damaged cells, right? We think about, if we think about how cancer develops, right? A cell mutates and sometimes it's in our DNA, sometimes it's not necessarily. But again, having this inherent system that gets those cells before they become too prevalent, it's a huge basis for helping to avoid
so our
cancer.
system has these, innate mechanisms to basically patrol and clean. But if we are doing things that are preventing that process from happening, like eating all the time, now we can't live to our sort of like natural extent that we were designed for, right?
Exactly. And that system is on overdrive if there's more damage. Where does that damage come from, right? Glycosylation, lack of methylation, right? All of these, important chemical reactions that are affected by what we eat every single day, how much we sleep, what our stress levels are, right? So this is really that bridge between the macro, what we're doing as humans on a day-to-day, and the cellular nitty-gritty biochemistry of it all. So it's really cool and fascinating.
It is, absolutely.
So it really is like we are taking out the trash at the cellular level. That's how people can think about this. And we've known about this for a while, right?
Yeah.
This is not necessarily
This is not new,
science.
but it is I think very prevalent the last couple of years in social media, TikTok, we see lots of conversation about various different ways to fast,
Yeah.
right?
The
And
other-
so, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the other piece with autophagy is that it actually improves our cellular energy production, right? So when we talk about, perimenopausal women who are exhausted and they have brain fog, that's because you have mitochondrial dysfunction. You're not making a lot of energy, right? This is going to help make that process so much more efficient to make true energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why then that group, not only will they notice that their body composition is improving once they start working with this, but they'll also have these symptoms that they thought maybe were hormonally driven, realized not at all for many of them. The mental clarity improving, their sleep improving, things like that you would chalk up to this is estrogen deficiency, and it may not be at all.
No, exactly. Especially like if you're 40, that's way too early for perimenopause. No way. We got bigger problems if that's going on. So, okay, how does what's the connection between fasting and autophagy? How does fasting trigger autophagy? Should we do a high level?
Yeah, and I think, people are going to wonder, okay, we're talking about grazing. They start wondering specifics. So we should probably start talking about timing here, right?
Definitely.
So this is very detailed science, right? So we can look at our little cheat sheet. And so you get into this sort of 0 to 4 hours, no autophagy happening there, basically, right?
Yeah, and that's in the sense of okay, if I'm eating breakfast, so if I eat breakfast, at 8 a.m., 4 hours later, right, we're still not quite there. And so think about that short time frame of maybe you have breakfast 7 or 8 and you're eating at 12, you're still not even in autophagy.
Happening, really.
Because what's happening is you're using the glucose, that sugar from the meal. That's giving you energy, right? So, and then we might be starting to dip into fat stores, but really that doesn't happen until 8 hours in. So you have to be fasting for 8 hours for us to dip into
which
our
most
stores.
people, the way their daytime is structured, you're not going to see that. You're really just going to see that for most people getting an 8-hour fast, right? This is where you're starting to shift into, okay, we're going to start burning off our glucose storage or glycogen. That will happen overnight because most people are not going the length of time during the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Generally, right? So when does autophagy start?
2 to 3 days in, right, of fasting, which people are going to be like, no way, come on, I got to fast for that long, right?
And that's that deep clean, right?
Yep, exactly. So what we tell people is really trying to hit those 12 to 14, maybe even pushing it to 16 hours. And again, that's mostly overnight. And how we accomplish that is you really want to stop eating about 2 to 3 hours before bed. That will really cover that 12 to 16 hours.
Yeah.
But then once
that's when you're starting to flip the switch where some things are sort of getting activated, some of these processes that will sort of dip towards the autophagy, right?
Exactly. Yep. And then once we extend beyond that, 24, 48, right? That is when we really start to get into that deeper level of autophagy, which we'll talk about how to safely
get to that level.
Start to get to that level. Don't just go and do that, right?
No.
Don't just go and do a 3-day fast. You're not going to feel great.
I mean, people do.
They do,
and it's not really wise. It's not recommended.
Yes. And we should say, if you have any medical condition, right, diabetes especially, make sure you're doing this under supervision because, your blood sugar levels will change based on this. But so that's the timeline. Anything else you want to say about that timeline? We hit it all for the most part.
I mean, right. I mean, we're doing a little bit of cellular cleaning, even in people who are doing what is considered, let's define time restricted eating.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
yes,
this
yes.
is where you're basically, because there's a lot of different categories within fasting, in that category, we have time restricted eating. So this is where people who, may be doing this out there, this is where you start to hear things like 16-8,
Yeah.
right? Watch your eating window, right? So I would say for most people, like starting out, a good window to start with is having a 12-hour fast,
Yep,
right? So
definitely.
you transition there, then you push it a bit more to 14 hours, and then ideally to 16, and you're getting like a little bit of activity once you get up to that level. And I think that should be done over a period of time, and depending on how metabolically flexible you are fasting and becoming more fasted adapted, then you could start to get to the point of being able to do these 24, 48-hour fasts.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that term metabolic flexibility. It really means your body's ability to switch between using glucose or carbohydrates as an energy source and fat or ketones, right? Those are our two main energy sources. Protein is not an energy source, right? A lot of people don't realize that. It's obviously involved in our metabolic pathways, but really we're talking about glucose and fatty acids or ketones.
Yep.
And so being able to switch between those. So when we dip into those longer periods of time, that's what's happening. So when you have a meal, those couple of hours after a meal, you're using that sugar from the meals, right? And even if you say there was no sugar, if you're having vegetables, if you're having there's sugar in there, right? But then if you go longer, 8+ hours, then you're dipping into your glycogen stores, not to get too sciencey here.
Right. But those are like your carb stores in the liver, basically.
Exactly.
Stored carbohydrate.
You got it. Yep. And then beyond that, once you deplete those stores, which 12, 24 hours probably, then you're moving on to those fatty acids, right? And you're burning that fat as fuel.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that metabolic.
Now, and then sometimes it can be a little earlier for some people.
Yeah,
so
sure.
if they are a little bit more fasting
Definitely.
adapted, you can even see ketones on a urine sample in the morning. If they've maybe they're going 14 hours pretty regularly where they're not eating 14, 16 hours, then you'll see, and they're taking these like breaks in between meals. So you start getting ketones in the urine. Obviously, yes, you don't need to make comments about diabetes. We understand that. But like healthy glucose norm patient, you can see ketones in some of these cases,
you can,
right?
Yep, definitely. And that's a really good point. It's like if you are more metabolically adapted and flexible, you'll be able to switch between those glucose and fat sources much more easily. And that is the goal. Like that is the long-term goal, is to burn that fat as fuel, right? Because then you're keeping a healthier visceral fat level, healthier subcutaneous fat level, right? Like that's the whole goal there. So,
and then the brain loves ketones, right?
It's its main source.
Prefers ketones to burn.
Exactly.
Okay.
Beautiful. Okay.
So we covered time restricted eating, right? So that's where you're getting into these eating windows. Then we would have the 5-2 diet. I think that's been popular out there. We'll just pop into that one and have a little discussion about that. So this is 5 days a week you're eating, normally, basically. And then 2 non-consecutive days. So you just pick 2 days of the week. Then you're eating really low calories.
Yes.
So this is more on the order of like 500-600 calories, right?
Exactly.
And so that can have benefits as well. So that is easier for some people than the daily fasting, right? Then we have 24-hour fast.
Yeah.
Some people find that is something that they can move into probably when they've done some time restricted eating first.
Yep.
And then that means they're basically having a meal and then not eating till the next day, but drinking water and electrolytes.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, herbal teas, right, and water, really important there.
And you can drink coffee. We'll get into some questions about this.
We
but
will.
It needs to be black like you like.
Yeah, just like exactly. Yep. Yeah, so I think too here, the cool thing about fasting is like you really can make it work for you. So I have some patients who really prefer those 24-hour fasts once a week or even once a month, right? There's also something called Prolon that you and I are really big fans of.
Yep.
This is direct to consumer. People can go on the Prolon website. There's a lot of great research behind this by Dr. Longo. We're big fans of his, where it's a 5-day fasting mimicking diet
But you get to eat.
Yes,
is the thing.
that's
Not
the
a
key.
lot. I've done it a lot of times, so I know the deal with it. You don't get to eat a lot, but you're actually eating.
Yep,
right.
exactly.
And you don't have to worry about windows or anything, but you will. It's established and measured if you're following the kit, 100% exactly as it is directed. By day 3, you're hitting autophagy.
Yep.
And then that continues even after the 5 days are up. It's continuing. They now have additional studies on this. Day 6, day 7, you're still in autophagy, even going back to eating your, regular healthy diet.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So those are really great, or that program is really great. And you could do it once a month for 3 months in a row, right? That's kind of the recommended way. Or you could do it once a quarter, right? Once every
and then,
months.
so usually, like when I'm recommending it to patients, I'll have them do it 3 or 4 months in a row and then maintaining the effects of it, because you've got so much great cellular cleaning. If you've never done it before, you really want to do it, like really line it up and do it. It's, the first time you do it, it's the most challenging.
Hard,
So then second, third, it's a little easier. But then you want to be doing it regularly, because that junk is building up in your system. So we just need to keep cleaning it out, right?
And with Prolon, work your way up to it, right? So you don't want to go from 0 to 100 and just do Prolon. You really want to work on a 12-hour overnight fast, 14 to 16 hours, right? Maybe do a 24-hour, right? You slowly build up.
And maybe get your calories down a little bit moving into it.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be extremely restricted, but if you're really overdoing it on calories and then you just go radically, you can do that. You totally can do that, but it's just you're going to be so hungry.
Yeah, exactly.
You're literally not going to be a happy camper.
Yeah, you will be. Yeah, disclaimer, you will be a little cranky and, tell your family.
We're just as I said, I've done it plenty, and my patients, many of them do it, and we joke, we're just I'm on Prolon, go to bed early. It's great in the winter, so you can just go to bed 8 o'clock, because then you're just okay, I don't want to deal with this hunger the first couple of days anyway.
It's so true. Oh my gosh. So, all right, we've got the autophagy. I feel like we've solidified what that means. What other benefits are there to fasting? None of these are going to come as a surprise, but it's worth mentioning. Weight loss, improved sugar stability, glucose metabolism. If you struggle with either insulin resistance or leptin resistance, fasting is the best way to improve leptin resistance. So that's really important there.
Right. And then lowering cholesterol. So even the fasting mimicking diet Prolon has been shown to reduce LDL cholesterol. And then another big indication, what I use it for in my practice, is patients that are having immune dysfunction, autoimmune conditions, potentially some with chronic infections. Careful with those patients that have chronic fatigue syndrome, though. That match, we think about patients that are good matches for Prolon, and just fasting in general, but that's a population to be really cautious with.
Yeah, agreed.
And maybe we should talk about women too, and fasting.
So, all right, with women, it can get a little bit tricky, right? So what a lot of women will say is they'll be like, my husband started fasting and he lost all this weight really quickly and felt amazing. So I started fasting and I felt horrible. We have heard this story
and then we
hate
the
times.
men.
Yes, and it's so frustrating. And there are differences there, right? And it's hormonally driven. And so with women, fasting is still a great option. We just might need to take a different approach, start off a little bit slower. Maybe we even work on the composition of your meals first. We don't even touch on that. But just because you're fasting doesn't mean you can eat whatever you want, right? You really want to reset those taste buds. And after you're coming out of a fast, start with a super healthy bitter meal with lots of good bitter greens in there. That's important.
Yeah. And the other thing then I would point out with women is just timing with their cycle. So if you're going to do something like Prolon, or you're going to do a 24, 48-hour fast, you might want to time it maybe just after your period as opposed to leading up to your period.
Definitely.
Because it, will be way more tolerated.
Yeah, we tend to feel better right after that period ends. And so important for sure. All right, we only have a minute or two left. A couple listener questions that we had around this. One of the main ones, like you mentioned before, is what's the deal with coffee? So does coffee break a fast? Depends. If it's black coffee, you're good to go. If there's anything in there, creamer or sugar, that is going to break your fast.
Right.
Any other thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I agree. So yeah, you just need, and you can do tea, that's totally fine. And then like sweeteners, obviously, you can't have anything in there. It just needs to be straight up tea or black coffee. So that's another thing that we'll recommend for patients to maybe get to that point so they're not diving into like a 5-day fasting program with like being on 4 cups of coffee with sweetener and cream in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then maybe one more question. Can I exercise when I'm fasting? Again, the answer depends. How long are you fasting? What type of exercise? If you're doing a 12-hour overnight fast, you can totally go exercise. That's fine. Anything you want. Just get a really good meal in after with some good protein in there. Not crazy, but protein and veggies. If you're doing a longer fast, 24 hours or something like Prolon, gentle walking is fine, but you're not going to want to go do really heavy lifting. You're going to be so much hungrier. You're breaking down your muscles, and then you're not giving them the calories they need and the protein they need to rebuild. So there's just no point, right? Gentle walking, stretching, a little bit of yoga, but otherwise.
Yeah. So generally, yes, I agree. And then as people start to, you get people out there who are very fasting adapted, right? And they can go on these you hear these crazy stories of what people are doing with water fasting and life-changing benefits from it. But again, we're like medical supervision, individual, but people can get super fasting adapted and they can exercise and amazing what
life
the body
goals
can actually do.
Exactly.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I'm not there
but,
yet either.
maybe working my way there.
I'm breastfeeding too.
It's out for you.
Fasting is
then
tricky when you're breastfeeding. That's a whole nother question we could talk about.
Well, yes. So we have we filled up this episode. So much more to say on this. And thank you for all the questions you've been sending in. Continue to send them. Please subscribe and check out our next episode. We'll see you soon. We're the Natural Doctors.